right, so we're here with Anthony Sabatino from ASPF Solutions. Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
sorry,
absolutely.
I had a long day. I'm just like getting hydrated and getting fed, and
It's
then
a great drink.
You came by. Thank you. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your business, just as like a brief introduction.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Anthony Sabatino. I'm the CEO and founder of ASPF Solutions. Essentially, what my business does is we're a social content creation marketing agency. So what we'll do is we'll work with small businesses, and we'll basically create all of their content, basically 30 days, month over month, and then manage it for them. And so it's funny because the first 2 years of ASPF Solutions, company's about 2 years and 3/4 years old. And for the vast majority in the beginning, I ran it basically as a consulting company where I was doing the massive amount of consulting, and small to medium-sized businesses were hiring ASPF Solutions, me, to do the consulting. And once I realized that there was this big moment when I realized that everybody still wanted it done for them, and I could literally spoon feed everything to them, but they still wanted it done for them. And so once I kind of connected those dots, I said, let me set up the infrastructure in my company to be able to do that. That's kind of where we sit today. So that's kind of where everything else is geared around now, of us actually doing that.
And that was a recent development, right?
That was fairly recent, yeah. There's a kind of a cool story as to like what really was the catalyst behind that, which I'm sure we'll touch on as well.
Let's touch on it right now.
Let's do it. Okay. So essentially what happened was, I want to say about 4 months ago, my Instagram, which at the time had about 50,000 followers. So I grew my brand, my personal brand, up to a pretty decent level in my opinion. And eventually what happened was it got hacked and taken down. And when I say hacked, I don't necessarily mean like my password got hacked. Like there were some really weird things going on to where they reported my account, all these different things for false allegations, right? And so I didn't do anything wrong, obviously. So I sat there for a little over 2 months with no Instagram. And as you can imagine, that Instagram account was one of my biggest funnels of leads, of interaction with my community. The brand that I built, everything was really based around that. Obviously my biggest source of a platform. So I lost that basically overnight, even sooner. It was like within an hour, I couldn't log into my account. So once that happened, it kind of forced me mentally to kind of revamp the business, because what was working so well in the beginning in the consulting fashion was geared a lot around me getting clients on a personal level. Once that was kind of gone in the blink of an eye, I had to regroup. And so in that regrouping process, I realized that epiphany where I was like, well, people really do need it done for them. Companies need this done for them, and we can absolutely do it. And not only can we do it, we can kind of root it all in what I use to build my personal brand to a pretty decent number in the matter of 2 years. I can use all the same strategies to do it for them with my team that I ended up building. And I felt like that would be a better contribution to these companies. So that's kind of the story as to why it happened. So I kind of took something that was, at the time, a big loss where I thought things were really up in the air. And I really did my best to kind of revamp the proper way and set myself up in a good path.
Yeah, something similar happened to producer Celia over there.
Really?
She lost her account as well. You end up getting it back, right?
I got it back, which is... You did not.
Yeah, Celia did not get hers back.
It's such a shame. So by the way, for the longest time was under the impression that I wasn't getting it back. So that was part of, there was no, I was not in communication with Instagram. Like there was nothing that I could kind of lean my hat on.
Did you ever find out what it was that maybe got your account flagged or marked as spam?
No, unfortunately not. I basically went off one email, which I made a vlog about it, kind of talking through the entire process and documenting everything that I learned. But all I really got was an email in the beginning saying it was down, and then I got an email back saying that it was back up. So I was kind of in the gray area the entire time.
Yeah. So you did document the entire process of like coming back from losing the account. Where can people find out, and what did you get throughout that process?
Well, a whole lot. So right now my YouTube channel is just my name, Anthony Sabatino. And I use a vlog, by the way, just so everybody knows, as just a catalyst of content, as opposed to me just kind of sitting in front of a camera and talking to people. I wanted to create kind of a creative spin on what I could preach out to the world, into my community. So I use a vlog as the format to do so. So when I say I documented the process, everything that I learned throughout that process was really transformative to me as a business owner, but also just, as I ran my business to help other clients, I learned a whole lot. And so the reason I used a vlog to do that is because I felt like it gave more just transparency to the process.
I just started doing a vlog with Homeroom, who was here before you. They are, it's raw, right? Like it actually shows people who you are a little bit. It's edited, of course, but the podcast format where we're having a conversation, people can get to know you. In the vlog format, people can get to know you. With the scripted, like social content, it's very much what you want people to know.
Sure.
And I feel like people are looking for a little bit more than that. And I think that's a great medium to do that.
Yeah, and I kind of got that a little bit into when I was really building on my Instagram. Because my Instagram, the reason I even got it to that size was because I kind of went all in on it and did, in the beginning, kind of disregard other platforms, which ended up being the complete opposite of my approach, where omnipresence became my focus. But in the beginning, Instagram was my main claim to fame. So when I was doing that, my actual intention was to give as much access to people as humanly possible, which I think people were attracted to.
Yeah, I like your approach. From what I've learned from you over a couple of conversations that we had.
Yeah.
We met at a Long Island Networkers event, and I had Adam on the podcast, the episode just before you. So that'll be fun to like connect these two together.
Yeah.
And you said something to me. It was along the lines of like, I'm very much in the camp of like, try things, do it quickly. If it doesn't work, get off of it. How did you arrive at that as like your overarching like strategy for your own social and maybe some of your clients as well?
Yeah. So what you just described there is the way I say it is pivoting is easier than manufacturing. So the way I like to look at that is, I can think forever to manufacture something out of thin air with a business idea, but the entire interim period while you're creating and thinking, you could be doing, right? And that's so general, right? So I don't even necessarily like to explain it that way. My point is, if I have to choose one or the other, I'd rather choose the alternative of let me do like 3 or 4 different things, find out what works and what doesn't. And by nature of me finding out what doesn't work, it's actually more of a lesson learned than a failure, which is that classic thing of, we don't fail until we stop kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you're making an educated guess either way, right?
Yeah.
So if you take more time, maybe you're looking at more data to make that decision, but it's something that I personally have struggled with in the past. And I'm sure a lot of business owners already are continuing to struggle with, which is inaction and like, getting that, being overwhelmed with making decisions and not making one at all, which is detrimental, because eventually when you decide to start or you decide to do that thing, you could fail there, or you could learn that lesson that you could have learned 3 months earlier.
Sure. Well, also, so there's a whole ton of emotional things that go into making a decision. And my point with, pivoting is easier than manufacturing is let me try to mitigate as much of those emotional blockages as possible when it comes to a business decision. That's kind of my mentality. Because if I allow all those emotional blockages that we tend to deal with as human beings, let alone business owners, you kind of can find yourself in a tough spot. So I just kind of mitigate that as much as possible. The way I do that is by doing more and just finding out as I go. Because there's the failure, to your point, is just there's nothing wrong with it.
I think people are afraid of failure.
Sure. Yeah.
Being a business owner, you're going to fail, and people want to fail as little as possible. It doesn't feel good to fail, but if you can become friendly with that feeling and just understand that that's how you learn, that's how growth happens, right?
I look at it as like, so when I fail, and when I quote unquote fail, and something doesn't go my way, I actually go the opposite way in the sense that I actually embrace it. So you can be friendly with fear, of course. I actually go like the complete radical form of that, which is against the grain, and it's like counterintuitive to what's happening when we're going through it. But I actually think when things are counterintuitive, that's a really good signal that it's what you're supposed to do. So if something doesn't go my way, I immediately go to celebrate it almost in the sense that, okay, that didn't work. Amazing.
I found out something that doesn't work.
Yeah.
It was like Thomas Edison. I found 900 ways to not make a light bulb or something.
Yeah, I love that one.
Like that's just a great example of, all right, cool. You learned something along the way. You learned, what not to do. Basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's take it back a little bit.
Sure.
How did you get started? Like, how did you come to create ASPF Solutions in the first place?
Yeah, so I can take you back if you want.
Yeah, bring it back. Where does it start? Some people start their story like in childhood. Some people start in adolescence. Some people start it after college or after school. Or where does yours begin? Okay,
so essentially for the longest time, the last thing I remember, like as a kid growing up, the entire purpose of my quote unquote career, what I was supposed to be, the ambition, was to be a lawyer. I was supposed to go into law. I was supposed to go to law school, do the whole thing. And
was this a self-proposed ambition, or was this like external? Someone telling you?
Very much external. Okay. Yeah, very, very much external. Not in a bad way, but it was just that was a big part of the influence behind it. And I can't stress enough, it was not in a bad way. It just simply wasn't resonating with me at a certain point. So for the longest time, I got my bachelor's degree here on Long Island at Stony Brook University in business. And my plan was right after graduating, I was going to go to law school. So I even got to the point of taking the LSAT, which is just the law school entrance exam. And I got, I think, 3 points less than the average of what you're supposed to get in. And so when I applied to the one law school that I was going to apply to here on Long Island, they denied me. And so when I got denied, I had an opportunity of either taking it again and really leaning into the process of becoming a lawyer, or kind of rethink things. And you have to imagine the entire time in between I was taking this, I was half in, half out already. So I always say this really funny thing. I took an LSAT prep class where I had to drive, I think, into Plainview to like twice a week to learn how to take the LSAT basically. And I skipped like half the classes. It cost like $1,000. Like I was half in, half out the entire time. And so when I didn't quite pass it, I was like, all right, we need to really understand what Anthony wants right now, because everything up to this point is making me miserable. And to really put in perspective as well, I actually worked in a law firm, like filing paperwork, scanning old files, like the grunt work for a couple of years. So I had
saw the day-to-day.
I saw the day-to-day
of those companies.
Yeah. And so I also understood that in order, by the way, the reason I wanted to be a lawyer outside of the external influence was I just wanted to make a lot of money. That was what my brain was telling me at the time. Obviously, that's not the way to look at it, but that's what I was doing. So I realized at a certain point, though, that the lawyers who make a lot of money are the ones that are passionate enough to really put in those 80-hour weeks. And I was nowhere close to have that level of passion. So I would be an average salaried lawyer and hate my life. So I was like, I'm going to need to make a change here. So once that happened, I started kind of really leaning into self-awareness. I was like, what am I good at? And in the process, during my bachelor's degree in Stony Brook, I was actually building out an Amazon wholesale business as well, which I still have today, which is really kind of cool to think about, which is also indicative of why I was half in, half out, because I was already building a business on the side.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we have an Amazon FBA store. So we have brand deals with different clothing lines that you can go on Amazon, buy a dress or a shirt or a pair of shoes, and it'll be from my store. But we have actual brand deals with like DKNY, Adidas, things like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. So you got to imagine it's about 5 years ago now. So it's 5 years old, but I was literally in classrooms in Stony Brook on my computer while they're doing a lesson plan, trying to figure out what I'm doing. So once that happened, I was like, I need to figure this out. So I knew I wanted something a little bit more at face value. I wanted to be the face of something. I wanted to build something on my own. The Amazon thing I was building, but it was very analytical, it was just kind of a cash flow thing. I wanted to build something where I can make an impact, do things like this that we're talking about, So I was like, what am I good at? And so in the beginning, it started off being, I was really good at personal finance stuff. Okay. I was really good at budgeting. I was really good at leveraging credit. I was really good at doing all those things. And I built up, accounts to a decent level, and I was good at not spending. I was just good at those things to a certain degree. So I started thinking, okay, maybe I could help people with this, So I started doing that for free. I started helping people. And then eventually I got my first client. And that's exactly how ASPF Solutions starts. So for people who don't know, ASPF is an acronym which stands for Anthony Sabatino Personal Finance. It's hysterical because I don't do anything like that anymore, but that's the business name. So I had my first client for $180 a month, and I built the entire business off of that. Never took any loan, no credit, or nothing. I built that client through the entire business. And so once that happened, the transformative way of the business ended up turning out like, okay, I can't really do personal finance stuff anymore. I don't have any of my licenses. Not that I was teaching anything like that anyway, but it was like if I wanted to really up my price point and really get into this, I'd have to have licenses. And I really wasn't falling in love with the finance portion of things anyway. So what ended up happening was the few clients that I ended up having, I started helping them because I was getting all of my clients through Instagram. So I started helping them how to brand themselves on Instagram. And I was realizing that was working even better. I was like, they're actually getting results through their branding on Instagram. So I started helping people for free on branding. And then that's how ASPF Solutions really did evolve to what it is today.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
It's
a long story, but
yeah, I didn't know it was personal finance.
Yeah, that's what it
was. Anthony Sabatino. I was trying to figure out the PF.
I know, nobody knows it because it doesn't make any sense for what I do now, but that's the way I wanted it. And I didn't want to change it either. I felt like the idea of what the company stands for is evolution of a business anyway.
Yeah, there's plenty of businesses out there that are like, I don't know, XYZ Corp.
Sure, yeah.
And it doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
You're doing business as something else, or just, running a business that is of a different industry.
Yeah, and to be honest, like, so when the company that I run now, I look back and it's actually more of a nostalgic thing. You know what I mean? As opposed to saying, one might say, well, why don't you change the name? Why don't you make up something else for the PF? But like, I really lean into what that started as because it wouldn't have been here without it.
MMP is exactly the same.
Really?
Yeah. So when we started Movers, I'll give the very short version.
Yeah.
When we started Movers, which is our creative community of people, it's how we met people like Celia and a lot of the artists that play at our music festival and all these different amazing creatives, including Jamie, who was just sitting in that chair right before you.
Yeah.
We were trying to figure out a name, and we couldn't come up with a name at all. And one of the things that we came up with was Middleman Productions. And we were like, all right, we're going to change the like negative stigma of the word middleman. And like, that's like, but we realized there's no way to change the stigma of that word. It's people think of you as a middleman and why do I need you?
Yeah.
So we didn't do anything with that name. And then years later, I was just like, I do media, I do marketing, I do production, MP. And then when I formed the new company, I used it as the name.
I love that. That's so funny.
So we both have little nostalgic names.
And it's great.
Matt, who was just on that last podcast that was in this room,
Same
is
story.
part of Movers, and he remembers MMP being this like stupid thing that we thought of doing one day.
That's good. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, we'll have this conversation in 5 years. We'll get to look at the podcast and be like, yeah.
Our businesses are completely different now. 5 years from now, we'll be doing, building aircrafts or something.
That'd be
then cool. I definitely won't be building aircraft.
Yeah, we can all believe. We can dream.
So let's see. Where do I want to go now? Tell me a little bit about how we touched on like your approach a little bit, but how are you specifically disrupting in your space?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, obviously, by the nature of the name of the podcast. And so I really felt like in the beginning, the biggest thing that I was doing differently that did kind of create a ripple was the access I was giving people through my content, but also through the service. So where I sit now, I think I've taken that to a different level. And I think that's what's really creating more of a ripple effect when we talk about just Long Island-based businesses. So the way I view it through my lens is, if I can be the face of something to the point where my communication at scale can impact, then I'm doing something right? And so my business will grow, my business will make money, everything will be good. But if I can be a face of something to the point where it matters and the way that I speak certain words resonates, then I want to lean into that, And so if there's one thing I can do to really disrupt the, you can call it the status quo, the way I do business isn't necessarily just analytical and metrics. I want to create a aura around what ASPF Solutions means through me. And through that, I think can be very disrupting if we look at what normal, everyday, white-collar business looks like.
Well, I think that's something that businesses are now gravitating towards doing. Everything is the same.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing the same thing on social or with their businesses.
Yeah.
There's a million real estate agents. There's a million mortgage lenders, right? How do you differentiate yourself in the marketplace? It's brand. Brand is going to become everything for a lot of businesses as they become commonplace, or there's so many people. So that is a huge thing that we share.
No, I agree. And also understand this, you can say the same thing through social media. Right? We've all seen it. Social media has been around for 10 plus years. It's been said and done with in terms of we know how posting content works. The difference is, what we're attracted to and what consumers are consuming is evolving
and standing out in like the Reels format, or we're doing the right things with our content now because that's the way that the algorithms are pushing us to do. But if your brand is standing out, it doesn't matter what format of content you're creating. It doesn't matter if you're being creative in that space, then you're going to always have an audience. You're always going to have people who are following what you're doing and who are loyal customers. I
would also say, if there's one thing that I really would harp on in the best way possible, it's the idea of telling a story through that. So if we look at, what Reels are doing and what TikTok is doing, and people are being exposed to new varieties of content creation that they haven't seen before, and they're saying to themselves, why is this working? A lot of times that can be overwhelming. A lot of times that can be confusing to the point of complete non-action, like paralysis by analysis, right?
Yeah.
And what I would say to people like that, because it's not like this one podcast, if it got 1 billion views, we still wouldn't change people's outlook on that.
No.
They would hear that and still be confused, and that's totally fine. We can be empathetic to that. What I would say is you can still tell your story. Tell a story that matters through your own uniqueness. Every single brand is different. Every single one, no matter how saturated a place is. or industry is. It really is independent. And so if you can tell your story, I think no matter what medium of content you choose, it'll be authentic enough. And the fact that authenticity is so attractive right now, I think there's still a lot of hope there.
Mm-hmm. You just got to get started.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the, I guess that's the message, is just do something. That's versus inaction, right? I
would say this, and I don't know if we're wrapping up soon, but I would say this. There's this one thing that I'm fascinated by, and I would love to kind of say it on this podcast. I heard it on another podcast. It was completely irrelevant. It was not meant to be in a business or even a philosophy type mentality, but I took it in that context when he said it. So essentially it goes like this, and it's to your point of just getting started. So once you get started, the biggest thing that stops you is that overthinking of, okay, like, am I doing this right? If I fail here, what am I going to do next? All those different things. And you overthink the whole process. I heard this, and I really hope it resonates with at least one person.
I hope it resonates with me.
It's going to.
Always overthink.
Okay, ready? So it's going to sound hysterical, so don't laugh, but just keep kicking the sandbag down the road.
Okay.
So what that means is, right, so picture kicking a sandbag down the road. It sounds awful, right? Nobody wants to do that.
Well, not down a road, but
I know what you mean.
Move some sandbags around.
Exactly. It sucks, right? So when you're doing it, though, the whole point is, if you can end up learning how to do that with a smile on your face, I think that is the solution. I would also say it's a really cool catalyst of understanding how to enjoy the journey, which we all hear so much. That's almost becoming romanticized as a thing to do in entrepreneurship, because we all hear it, but very few understand how to do it.
People lack patience in general to do anything. You need to be consistent, and you need to be patient, because it takes time, and that's kicking the sandbag.
It's also like the reason that's happening is attachment to outcome. So they're pouring into the outcomes that they think they're going to get.
Instant gratification is something like huge nowadays. People are looking for that instant gratification, myself included. Like, it's just the environment that we live in.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that if you just keep kicking it down the road, good things will happen. So whatever that means to you, like, if you can learn how to just keep moving with a smile on your face, no matter what's thrown at you, if you keep doing it, good things will happen.
I can bring that example directly to social media. Client who was in this room before you, Home Room Lending, they are now 8 to 10 months into actually doing something.
Okay.
Meaning the podcast and content creation. And they have like 400 followers, nothing crazy, but they're the right 400 followers. They're the right people. And they've been like waiting for the numbers to jump up. But what they've noticed is the revenue numbers are jumping up, because they're making the right connections. They're meeting the right people. They're using the tool in the correct way. And it's just starting to happen. It's taken those 8 to 10 months to become known as those almost celebrities in their field. Where like Jamie went to an event the other day and people noticed them. And was like, oh, you're Jamie, the Latino lender from the Home Room Lending podcast.
That's awesome.
And he was like, yes, that's amazing. And then he came back, he called me, and he was like, Steve, 8 months. Like, that's how long it took for someone to notice me. And I was like, great, it's working.
That's so great.
And that's kicking that damn sandbag.
That's what it is. I remember I was in Salt Lake City like a year ago, and somebody noticed me in the airport.
No shit.
And that was game changing. I was like, oh my God. But
that's like crazy.
That was a year and a half in, though, at that point. So I would have never imagined that to be the case. My brand was growing, but I would never expected that. I think sometimes when you don't expect it, again, good things happen.
So if people want to learn more from you, maybe check out the vlog. Where can they do it, and how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm usually really active on Instagram. I'm really active in my DMs as well. I get a lot of messages there. So my Instagram handle is just at Anthony Sabatino, ASPF. And my YouTube channel, if you want to check out the vlog, I also have a podcast on there as well called The Anthony Sabatino Show. But again, my YouTube channel is just my name, Anthony Sabatino.
Sweet. Well, thanks for being here, and I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much. Happy to be on.
Keep on disrupting.
It's my goal.
All right, I'll talk to you.